Welcome in to the Rock Talk Studio, your source for recommendations on new rock and roll books and documentaries you don't want to miss. And this is a bonus episode where I get you all caught up on what is new and what has just been announced is coming out in the world of rock and roll books and documentaries. And in just the last few days, there have been some huge announcements. I'm going to get you all caught up on that. Also have news about the Alex Van Halen memoir, new projects featuring Rush, Tom Petty, Paul McCartney, Bruce Springsteen, and more. I'm your host, Big Rick. Join me for an exclusive look into what's hitting the shelves and the screens, and get ready to rock your reading and viewing list. I'm going to start the show with something that no one saw coming. It's the big news of the month. It's really cool. And it's news about the new Alex Van Halen memoir. Alex is going to include the last song that he and Eddie worked on in his new memoir, Brothers, in an audio version that he recorded. Alex Van Halen's memoir was a surprise when it was first announced. So this is another cool thing about this release. And I think this is one of the biggest releases of the year. It's 240 pages. It comes out October 22nd. And he also just announced that he's going to do a limited book tour. So he's going to go out and he's going to talk about the book. A lot of great stuff surrounding this book. I can't wait till October. I will definitely be featuring it as a spotlight title and give you all you need to know once I get a chance to read it. Rush is 50 this year. Well, at least their first recording is. And a new book just came out to celebrate and honor the band and its 50-year milestone. The book is called Rush at 50, and it explores 50 milestones and notable events in their career. I got a copy sent to me a few weeks ago. It's a nice looking book, kind of a smaller coffee table type of book. 186 pages, a ton of photos, memorabilia, a complete discography. If you're a Rush fan, this looks really good. I'm hoping to feature it next month. Good year for Rush fans. Geddy Lee's memoir last year was such a treat, really insightful, and a book every Rush fan must have. If you're interested in that, I reviewed the book earlier in the year. It's in episode 21. Check that one out. Geddy Lee book, My Effin' Life. Next up is a book and doc featuring the same artist, the one and only Paul McCartney. I've got a bunch of docs to discuss, some really big news too. Other than the Van Halen news about the Eddie tune, I would say the upcoming doc news is the biggest news of the month. But let's do a few more book mentions, and I will throw in this McCartney doc and then jump into the rest of the documentary news coming up next. Do you want some more recommendations about good rock and roll books and documentaries? I mentioned it earlier here about the Geddy Lee book in the archives. The archive currently has 37 shows in there. That's 37 books and docs that I reviewed and make suggestions on. Those are still free. They're still up in the archives. Just did a great review on Learning to Live Together. It's a documentary about the reunion of the Mad Dogs and Englishman band. Made me think of the Leon Russell book I read last year in review. That's in the archives. And also this amazing book called Drums and Demons about Jim Gordon. Kind of all ties into that Mad Dogs and Englishmen time and band. A lot of great stuff in the archives. Again, if you're looking for a good rock and roll book and documentary to check out, that's the place to go. All right, let's take a look at that McCartney book and doc news. We'll start with the book. There's a new Paul McCartney book called McCartney Legacy, Volume 2, 1974 to 1980. It's a comprehensive look at McCartney's life and work post-Beatles. This is the follow-up to McCartney's Legacy, Volume 1. Did anybody read that one? It came out in 2022. It was billed as the most complete work on the life and work of Paul McCartney ever published. Volume 2 is the next chapter in McCartney's career, looking at the 74 to 80 years. 768 pages. Wow, it's a big one. And considering Paul's marketing team is usually right on, this is scheduled to come out for the holidays. You're looking at December 10th release date, maybe something for the holidays there. There's also news of a new Paul McCartney documentary. The doc falls right in the beginning of the time period of this new book. It's from 1974, and it's called Paul McCartney and Wings, One Hand Clapping. It explores the recording session at Abbey Road Studios. The behind-the-scene looks delves into the making of the One Hand Clapping album, featuring rare footage, interviews with the band, insights from the creative team, and more. It also has what sounds like a pretty cool add-on a previously unreleased backyard session, they're calling it, which showcases Paul on acoustic guitar performing tracks from his catalog. Highlights include the previously unreleased song Blackpool and covers of his personal favorites, including 20 Flight Rock, which was the song that Paul played for John Lennon during their first time they ever met. The screening also boasts an exclusive film introduction by McCartney and previously unseen Polaroid pictures from the sessions. I like what I'm hearing about this. It has a theater-only release right now, and that starts on September 26. I'll keep you updated if they announce a streaming date for those not interested in going out to the movies to see this one. Here's another book that lands in the world of the Beatles, and it's a book I just read. It's entitled In Your Mind, The Infinite Universe of Yoko Ono by author Madeleine Boccaro. I just finished reading up this book, and I'm a little blown away by how much I didn't know about Yoko Ono. She is such a hot button for a lot of Beatles fans, and for those fans, I would challenge you to read this book because the author Madeleine Boccaro does not just gloss over things. She has a lot of high praise for Yoko and is definitely pro-Yoko, but you get such an overarching look at Yoko that you can't help but to admire her wisdom, her work as a feminist, and who she has become as a person and how creative she was. You get to see what her art meant and the statement she was trying to make behind it, which is always kind of nice, especially when it comes to Yoko stuff, because it was so avant-garde. It was just so kind of out there. So it's kind of nice to see a little bit behind the curtain there. Boccaro does a great job of using a handful of really insightful quotes from Yoko to expand on her views and kind of help paint the picture of who she really is. It's a deep, moving piece on Ono as an artist and person. I enjoyed the great research on the early years and kind of her lonely upbringing. There is a lot to unravel in those early years, and the book does a great job of looking at the duality of her hardship and her position within her family. Yoko spent so much of her life just being misunderstood and misrepresented that it was nice to read the whole story instead of just snippets from times of her life. Yoko has a different perspective on life than most, and her spiritual philosophy comes through in these pages. Her wisdom and continued message of healing and peace and love, even after what happened to John, has always been what she is about. I think this gets pushed under the rug. She was standing right next to Lennon when he was killed. It's a sickening thought. I don't think she gets enough credit for how she was able to come through that and how she ended up handling his legacy. Boccaro got some high praise for this book. I've got to mention this. Sean Lennon said, "We love your book. It's beautiful. Thank you for caring enough to be so meticulous." And famous Lennon friend and publicist Elliot Mintz said, "The book is a masterpiece. Mandatory reading for anyone seeking insight into a woman like no other." That alone should give you some clue on the quality and high standard of this work. To say this is the definitive work of Yoko Ono would definitely not be an understatement. It has been even placed in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame books archives. I feel like this book in Yoko's life will be looked at years from now, and people will realize how sincere she was and how misinterpreted she was. I highly recommend this book. Really great work. In Your Mind, The Infinite Universe of Yoko Ono by Madeleine Boccaro. Okay, that wraps up the book news. It's all about rock and roll documentaries coming up next. Do you know what Cameron Crowe's first film was? Most people are going to say 1989, Say Anything, but there was a film he did before that, and that film is about to be reissued, and that's kind of the big documentary news this week. The film actually premiered on MTV in 1983 at 2 a.m. in the morning, and it was only showed once before it was yanked because it was deemed as too experimental at the time. And I tell you, I swear I somehow remember seeing that film. The film is called Tom Petty's Beach Party, and it followed Petty and the Heartbreakers during their 82-83 tour for the album Long After Dark. Here's a cool quote from Cameron Crowe. "Heartbreakers Beach Party occupies a special place in my heart. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers leaned into the making of the film with a kind of hilarious, music-filled honesty that still feels fresh 40 years later. It was also my first experience as a director." Crowe and the Petty estate have come together to restore the film, adding a new intro from the director and 20 minutes of previously unreleased footage. Right now, it's only going to be showing in theaters, and that starts up on October 17th. I haven't found any streaming use yet, but they've got to put this out. It's just too cool. I'm really fired up about this. I'm a big Petty fan. Me and my brother saw that Long After Dark tour. I'm reading a new Petty book right now, all about Tom. Can't wait to see this doc. Another documentary news that will definitely be streaming, and it's going to be out on Hulu and the Disney Channel starting October 25th, and that's Road Diary, featuring footage from Bruce Springsteen's latest world tour. It's said to offer the most in-depth look ever at the creation of their legendary live performances. The documentary features behind-the-scenes access to the 2023-2024 world tour. There's also footage of band rehearsals and special moments backstage, as well as hearing from Springsteen himself. The Springsteen commentary is described as conversations that follow Springsteen closely as he develops the story he wants to tell with this tour's set list. It's interspersed with rare archival clips of the E Street Band, underscoring themes of life, loss, mortality, and community. Doesn't get much better than Bruce Springsteen. He's such a great storyteller and such a huge presence as a live performer. Road Diary, October 25th. Okay, gonna wrap up this month's Book Buzz and Doc News with another pretty big announcement, because we finally got a release date of the new biopic, and it's going to be this year. The new biopic starring Timothée Chalamet is called Complete Unknown, and it's the story of when Dylan first arrives in New York City and follows his rise up until going electric. Have you seen the trailer? If not, don't judge this one until you've seen it. I'm a big Dylan fan, and I was really impressed by what I saw. I've read a bunch about this. Both director James Mangold and Chalamet both consulted with Dylan on the script. Merry Christmas, everyone. This biopic comes out December 25th. Coming up next week, I'm back with a regular format that features a spotlight title and a great recommendation for you. It's a new book, a great new book. It just came out from an artist that I talked about in today's podcast. 8 artists and bands were discussed today. Which one am I talking about? Here's your clue: Beach Party. All right, tear it down, pack it up, and head on down the road. We'll see you next time in the Rock Talk studio.
Have you ever heard a song that makes you scream, "This is the greatest song I've ever heard in my entire life"? Or maybe it's more like, "This is the greatest song I've ever heard in my entire life"? Do we have a podcast for you? I'm Scott, the host of the podcast, This is the Greatest Song I've Ever Heard in My Entire Life. And together with my co-producer Catherine, we talk to musicians, actors, writers, producers, journalists, other cool people about their favorite songs and why they love them. We've had episodes with artists like Mitski, Chaperone, or Sandra Lerche, music content creators like Pablo the Dog, and journalists like Rolling Stone's Brittany Spanos, talking about songs ranging from Feed the Birds from Mary Poppins to Deliverance by Opeth, My Heart Will Go On, and Dancing Queen. So check out our podcast, This is the Greatest Song I've Ever Heard in My Entire Life, wherever you get your podcasts, and learn about the music we love and why we love it.